Welcome to the historic Rhodes Hotel. Built in 1893, the hotel started out as just a hotel and boarding house, built by a gentleman named George Kaufman, bought by Newton Rhodes, supposedly for his wife Clara Rhodes. However, it was Clara that actually ran the hotel with her two children. Newton Rhodes ended up passing away. The hotel became a speakeasy and a brothel. At least that's what legend tells us. What we understand is that Clara became very obsessed with keeping the hotel going at whatever cost. She was a woman of business back in the early 1900s, and to make it succeed, she is the one that turned it into a speakeasy and a brothel. So what you are looking at today is what we have done to try to restore the hotel back to its original condition. The room that we're standing in now, we actually call it the Green Parlor. However, we believe that in history, it used to be the library. What we do know is that the auction list named the location, and it actually gave us a layout of what used to be here in the hotel. It said there were 3 parlors downstairs and 1 parlor upstairs. The 3 parlors were a music room, a library, and a game room. We believe this room to be the library simply because we had a gentleman who remembers coming in here as a child. His grandfather was one of those people that had actually worked on the hotel. And he came into this room and he described it as having shelves on the walls filled with books, and there was a huge stuffed owl with its wings spread. He also described this check-in desk. Now this is not original, it was rebuilt out of parts that we found here at the hotel. As I'm going through the auction list, I come across some very unique items. I was actually walking down the street one day, and this little old lady stops me down the road and she says, "I have something for you." So what she does is she hands me this little milk glass. She actually bought it from the auction back in 1968, which meant that it returned to the hotel 50 years after it left. It's one of the original pieces from 1893. It seems that the hotel is bringing things back as it wants it to, and it's revealing things as we're going through. We found several things here, including the adding machine. We found this tape player that has a sermon and choir practice on it. We also found an Eastern Star Bible from 1941. That opened up a whole different side of history to the Rhodes family. Newton Rhodes was a Mason, a Maccabee, and an Oddfellow, which were 3 secret societies for men back in the early 1900s. Now these secret societies are a little bit different today, but back then in the early 1900s, they were very spiritual in nature. They were also very racist in nature. So that may explain some of the activity that does occur here in the hotel. I can also say that during an investigation here at the hotel, we had some gentlemen who were up in the attic and they were listening to their equipment. Their equipment was guiding them where to go, basically. And they ended up reaching down into one of the walls upstairs. And what they pulled out were these 2 shoes. The interesting thing about the shoes is that they're cobbled from early 1900. You can even see the nails in the bottom of the baby shoes. Now, what makes this so unique? Back in early 1900, 1890s, when they would build homes like this, they would put personal objects in the walls, photographs, old newspaper clippings, shoes, things like that, and it was to ward off evil. I can tell you from my own personal experience, where these shoes were located were above a closet upstairs, and it is the one room in this hotel that I will not walk into if the closet door is open. This room actually brought up a lot of question as to what it was in the beginning. Well, we put it in the nice little table here, got some odd decorations going on, but what some of the people in town used to tell us, or actually tell us today, is that there was a coffin that sat in front of this window for years. Now, why would there be a coffin there? That was the question we were asking ourselves. Okay, so the room that we're in now is actually the room that we call the banquet room or the ballroom. There's been a lot of restoration when we got here. 3 years ago when we got here, you're talking, it had plywood floors, the walls were falling apart, the ceiling was falling in. We've done a lot of restoration, there's still a lot more going on. Since we don't have we don't know exactly what was here before, we're putting in a lot of our own things. One of the things that we put in was this nice little fireplace here. We did that because we are hoping to eventually host overnight murder mystery dinners, and one of the reasons is that this fireplace actually opens to reveal our secret bar. The interesting thing about the room is the color of the walls, the red color that you see. We just randomly came up with the color. We were wanting something unique that looked kind of eerie in this room, you know, trying to keep with the feel of a paranormal hotspot. And when we took off the light switch covers, it was exactly this color underneath. So it turned out that we painted the room back to the color that it used to be. This room we lovingly call the game room. We had an investigator who came here who was utilizing their equipment, and they were waiting for the equipment to come up and say that there was a spirit that they were communicating with. Basically, you know, the whole click yes once, click twice for no, and she dealt cards out, and she waited until it said something was there, and she says, "Do you want another card?" It clicked once for yes, so she laid it down. She's like, "Do you want another card?" Again, clicked once for yes, she laid it down. She looked at me, or later when she's telling me the story, she's like, "Chris, it had 15 at that point." She said, do you want another card?" It clicked twice, no. So she looked down at her cards and she's like, "Well, I want another card." So she laid one down for herself, and she got 21. Instantly, her equipment went crazy. Everything went crazy because it was upset that she had won the game. Since then, the EVPs and things that tended to come out of this room were things like liar, cheater, deal, play, poker. That's why this room is now called the game room. I have no evidence to state that this originally was, but it seems to fit with the evidence that's coming back. Other things that have happened in this room include shadow figures that have walked through the rooms, things like that. So I don't want to discount some of the normal paranormal activity that happens in a lot of the rooms that are here in the hotel. However, you'll notice as you look around the room now, there are several dolls and objects in the room. These dolls are here because somebody has claimed that there was paranormal activity attached to them. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every doll in this room is haunted. That would be crazy. However, as a haunted premier location in Indiana, we have welcomed gifts where people have claimed there was activity attached to them. The reason is because I have investigators here pretty much every weekend. This is an opportunity that they can actually look at it and try to get scientific evidence proving or disproving if there is actually activity with these objects. Now, I can tell you some of my favorite objects in here. There's the red head in the green dress. Her name is Crystal, and she tends to change her facial expressions. Again, she's porcelain, so that shouldn't happen. The one next to her over here is actually Christine in the bridal gown. She has been known to turn her head to look at men when they walk in a room. We have this doll down here. This doll here is actually in this room because it tends to manipulate people. There are two types of people that will see this doll. There's the one person that looks at the doll and they just want to pick it up. They just want to hold it. They love this doll. I've actually had to fight people from carrying this doll out of the hotel. The other type of person looks at the doll and they're immediately terrified of it. They want to be away from it. That is one thing about photography and stuff in this hotel is finding a good lighting location.
Yeah, because the walls are kind of dark and everything.
Yeah. We're now on the second level of the hotel where the actual rooms are located. This particular room has its own story, just like most of the rooms here in the hotel. The story of this room is about a preacher. Now, what I have verified, there is fact and there is legend. Fact is, in 1900, there was a Reverend Lee Poor that used to live here at the hotel. In 1902, Reverend Poor was married. In 1904, his wife died of consumption, which was tuberculosis at the time. This is where we get into the legend. Legend is that the preacher ended up returning to the hotel after his wife had passed away, and he ended up hanging himself in the attic of sadness and loneliness. Now, I can't verify that information. I have spoke to the Hamilton County historian, and he was telling me that that did not surprise him at all. He was telling me that back in history, during the time of the hotel, several people would go to hotels to commit suicide so that their families wouldn't find them. He believed that actually there were several suicides that took place here in the hotel, and every one of them were covered up and erased so that nobody knew actually what happened. What I can tell you is that I was able to verify all that information on the Reverend, but I'm not able to verify what happened to him after 1904. It's like history just disappeared.
Lights a little better.
I was going to say, this room should be a lot different. Hold on. There, I got one bulb in here that works. But I got two more lamps over here for me.
trying to see if I can get you focused in. And it was weird, the other room, yeah, you might want to move towards that. The other room focused you in, all of a sudden, you were out, and then you came in, I don't know, it was weird. It was like completely in shadow, and then it was like a light turned on, you came completely in. So.
This is one of my favorite rooms in the hotel. What I can tell you is that when we first came to the hotel about 3 years ago, what we were told was there was a young man with a J name in this room. That's all they knew. It was about 3 years ago. I was downstairs and I had my computer set up and I was doing some work on it. And I kept hearing boots that sounded like they were walking from that room to this room, back out into the hallway, back into this room, and it kept getting faster and faster. I'm not a very brave man, and I'll admit that. And it got to be pretty late and I kept hearing it until finally I'm like, that's it, I'm going to bed. So I did. I got up, I went to bed. The next day I go outside, and I'm going to mow the grass or something, and I glance up and I notice the glass from this window is gone. So I rush up here as an owner. I'm thinking, great, I'm going to have to repair another window. I don't know what's going to happen. And what I found was there was no glass on the floor at all. All the glass was outside, which was interesting. So we do some more research and we come across an obituary of John Everett Rhodes. He was the J name, a young man with a J name in this room. John Everett Rhodes, when he was 4 years old, he had a whooping cough. Therefore, he became very asthmatic. He was considered a very frail young man his whole life. He spoke very breathy, which is important when you're listening to EVPs because that voice does come across. As doing some more research, it turns out that when he was 18 years old, John Everett Rhodes was diagnosed with tuberculosis. This is the room he was quarantined in. This is also the room he died in. Several years ago, there was a police officer that came here to investigate. It was his first time investigating. So they decided that they were going to close all the doors upstairs and they were going to conduct a raid, just like a speakeasy. So he's armed with a full spectrum camera and he's going from room to room and he's banging on the doors. Please, open up! And then he opens up the door, he pops in with his full spectrum camera up and nothing. However, when he got to this room, something different happened. When he popped open the door, it jammed. That's normal. It's an old building. I'm not going to call that paranormal. However, when he finally did get into the room, he comes in blazing with his camera up, and what he caught was a large shadow right here in the corner that lunged at him and pushed him right back out the door. Needless to say, that police officer ended up taking his camera, looking at the people he was with. He handed the camera to him and said, well, I may not have believed before, but I do now. And he left. So this room is probably not as historic looking as we eventually want to have it, but we did it this way because we have 3 children that are in the hotel, spirits of children I should say. One of them is a little girl that is looking for mommy. We have another little girl that seems to be like she's playing school teacher, so we're not sure, we just know she's very quiet. Then we have the little boy. Now the little boy is a little practical joker. He will touch people. When he touches you, it feels like you just walked through cobwebs. He drains your batteries. He loves to play with flashlights, and he also loves to play with the clown by spinning it. Now, this room is usually pretty calm. The activity in here is pretty subdued, no big deal, until that closet door opens. That is the one major rule I have about this hotel and investigators who come to this hotel. If you open this door to investigate, I'm fine with that, but it needs to be closed before you leave. I will not walk in this room if that closet door is open. In the walls above the closet area itself is where those shoes were found from downstairs. Again, you know, they used to put personal objects into walls to ward off evil, so I don't know if there was something going on there. I do know that other investigators have claimed, and this was prior to us taking over ownership and coming here, that they would open the door and something would lunge at them. I don't know what that's about. That's never happened to me. All I know is that the feeling of the room changes when that door opens. I also know that when people have K2 meters in this room and they open that door, the K2s tend to spike all at the same time. Sarah actually worked here when it was a brothel. And what we don't know is why she is still here. We do know that Sarah loves to talk to people on equipment through ghost boxes and obelisks and things like that. She loves to speak through them. She seems to be in her 20s, she's got bright red hair, and she's very witty. I had a gentleman who came here. He was sitting on the edge of the bed. He's running an EVP session, and he says, I feel like somebody's touching me. Are you touching me right now? He gets a woman voice, clear as day, that says, you wish. That's the type of conversations that Sarah likes to have. We also have a recording that came out by a group, and forgive me, I can't recall the group's name right now, but a woman that was actually sitting here on the bed, and they were scanning through with their cameras, and what you catch is the woman actually, you see her hair lifted up over her shoulder, and she does one of these things. And that's when the gentleman running the camera was like, what just happened? And she's like, I feel like somebody just touched me. He's like, I think I caught that on camera. And they had. You see the hair picked up and lifted directly over the shoulder. It was one of the neatest things I've seen. Now, Sarah will talk to you throughout the night. She loves to carry conversations. She has a tendency to hang out again with closets. Closets, I'm going to speak about them just for a second, are very unusual in the hotel. Especially one of this age. They used to have wardrobes in all the rooms. So the fact that we have 5 closets upstairs is unheard of for a building like this. Sarah, again, you know, she tends to hang out with people in the closet area, and a lot of people will like lock themselves in the closets and stay in there with her and try to get reactions. She will speak to you throughout the night until another spirit tells her to stop. And once that happens, you won't hear from her for the rest of the night. And he was doing that whole thing with his camera just flashing through. And what he caught, and I was sitting there on the floor, and I'm like, something just touched me. And what he caught was this orb, which I'm not big on orbs, right. But this one, it actually started from here, and like my backside, and went straight up. And then the last picture he got was this huge orb in front of my face. Uh-huh. That's right after me saying that it was something touched me. And interestingly enough, and this you probably don't want to put on the video, but it was his picture number 666.
Well, that's wild.
Yeah, I was just like, really? Thanks. So.
That's wild.
Okay, this is well lit.
Okay, so when I talk about the gentleman who tells Sarah what she can and can't do, we believe it's the gentleman in this room. We've always called him Michael. He's been called the pimp. He's been called the protector of the hotel. Evidence seems to indicate that Michael was actually a patron here at the hotel. He was actually in love with Sarah. Sarah loved her job. Michael became very obsessed with Sarah and wanted to have her all to himself. So something happened between the two of them, because you hear a man and woman that are arguing during investigations. That seems to be those two that this is happening between. I can also say that the equipment in this room, in all the other locations of the hotel, your equipment gives you pretty normal evidence and things coming back. It's pretty unique to the surroundings, but this is the one room where you get a lot of blood, shot, death, murder. That seems to come from this room, and we don't know why. Now, I can tell you that, you know, it's not a circus. I can't make spirits perform on command. But what I can tell you, as good investigators, we all know that we hope to be in the right place at the right time when something happens. I had a group that came here from Chicago. Love them dearly. They actually came here their very first time, and they had investigated all night. And before they left, they come to me and they're like, you know what, we didn't get a lot of activity, but we had a great time, great place. They absolutely loved it. They went out in front of the hotel and they snapped a picture of the hotel. And what they got in the picture made their trip more than worth coming. They caught a woman that was standing right here in the window and a man standing next to her. The woman's picture was so clear, she was wearing a handmade flowered dress. Now, needless to say, that group has been back about 8 times now. Every time they come back, activity increases. I think as the spirits become comfortable with groups, they get more and more activity. So the room that we're in now, actually when we first got here 3 years ago, it had been converted into a large walk-in closet. There was a place to hang clothes on one side, a place to hang clothes on the other side, huge dresser on one location. We ended up pulling all that out because historically this was a bedroom by itself. That door was added in. It was not originally here. So once we had done that, the activity in this room changed. Originally the activity was innocent enough. It's a cat. There's a ghost cat that walks through the hotel. You'll hear it meow. It will rub up against people and they'll swear there's a cat there when there is no cats in the hotel. Once we changed the room and we converted the room, we started getting some different activity. We've gotten 2 names out of this room, and I'm not sure who they are at all. One of them was an Eva, and the other one was what sounds like Rachel. We've been doing a lot of research trying to figure out where these names have come from, and then all of a sudden it occurred to us, and did a little bit of research. This bed that we brought in was actually given to us by a family that good friends of ours. It's from 1880, and what's interesting about the bed is that the original owner's last name was Raquel. So we think that maybe that's the name that we're getting in this room, and we've always said it's Rachel when it's actually Raquel. So.
Didn't see it, but that'd be pretty creepy. All right, good.
Okay. The last story that I'm going to tell you about the hotel are the crawlers. First, I'm going to start the story off with to say that these are very, very rare. I've had about 30 reports of individual crawlers that people have seen. However, to see them, what most people have reported is that they've turned off their equipment and they literally have sat here in the dark, and that's when they occur. It's like technology seems to keep them away. Now, I say that, however, I did get a thermal image back of a crawler that was hung up in the corner. So that has come back as well. There are 2 types of crawlers in the hotel. One of them I have never seen, the other one I have seen personally. One that I've never seen looks like a giant spider. It will actually come out of the back parlor, it will crawl along the walls, disappear around door frames, and crawl up, and from the reports, it has literally crawled up within an inch of a person. Then it crawls very quickly up to the ceiling, and it disappears into the ceiling, and you'll start hearing things being thrown around in the attic. Again, I have never seen this type of crawler, but I've had about 30 reports of that particular crawler. Now, the one that I have seen, which I've also had quite a few reports of, I was standing on the staircase, and I had 5 people standing with me, and we all witnessed the same thing. And it was coming from the small bathroom area. And what it was a man with elongated arms, elongated fingers, and he's pulling himself along the baseboard, along the floor. He has no legs. So why is this happening? The things that I can tell you that actually are indicators that it's about to happen. First, you will hear what sounds like ripping carpet. So something being torn. As soon as that happens, everything will turn very, very black. You will not even be able to see your hands in front of your face. And then as your eyes start adjusting to the light, that's when you see him crawling out from wherever he's coming. I have seen him twice to date. First time I saw him from the small bathroom. The second time I saw him actually coming from the room that has Rachel's bed in it. So it has occurred. I am not the only person who's seen it. It has been reported several different times, and he can be very creepy. I had a guest who came here, and she explained to me, she's like, are you aware what you're telling me is actually Japanese folklore? And I'm like, what do you mean Japanese folklore? She's like, well, in Japan, the actual folklore is, typically it's a woman. Males are very rare. And what I can tell you, what we have here is actually a male. She says, but it's exactly how you describe. You do hear what sounds like a fan or ripping carpet or paper or something ahead of time. Then it turns very dark, and then what you see is this thing crawling across the floor that has no legs. She said that typically it was somebody who was hit by a train. That's what the legend says. I can tell you that all the guests that originally came to the hotel came because of the railroad track here in Atlanta. The railroad track that runs through Atlanta is the first railroad track ever laid in Indiana. And it is less than a block from the hotel. All of the guests came in because of the railroad track. In fact, Atlanta, Indiana used to be the hub of jobs in Hamilton County. It went from 30 people to 2,700 people within 2 years. And now there's less than 700 people. So it's become pretty much a ghost town.